The Book of Mormon, first published in 1830 by New Yorker Joseph Smith, it quickly captivated the hearts and indeed the souls of an enormous following. What did Smith claim about its origins? What does it actually say? And why is it so important to the story of America? Fasten your seatbelts, we've got the true story of the Book of Mormon on this episode of Bigfoot's Great American History Show. Joseph Smith Jr. was born in Sharon, Vermont in 1805. At around the age of 10, he settled with his family in western New York, then the epicenter of the spiritual revival known as the Second Great Awakening. Indeed, Smith would be one of several Americans in the region to lead new religious movements or utopian communities over the coming decades. Only a year after Smith published the Book of Mormon, William Miller of nearby Lowhampton, New York, used the Book of Daniel to calculate that the second coming of Jesus Christ would occur in 1844. Spoiler alert, it did not. After the so-called Great Disappointment, however, some of Miller's followers reinterpreted his prediction and organized the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Meanwhile, John Humphrey Noyes' Oneida community, founded in 1848, practiced complex marriage, in which all the men in the community were simultaneously married to all the women and vice versa. The Oneida community is perhaps best remembered today for its legacy of selling fine silverware. Joseph Smith's family had left Vermont in pursuit of economic opportunity, following a failed ginseng business venture and the crop failures associated with the so-called Year Without a Summer of 1816. Western New York, on the other hand, was looking forward to an economic boom once the state legislature approved funding for the Erie Canal. Alas, things proved not much better there for the Smiths, who would be forced to rely upon, among other things, tapping sugar maples to make ends meet. At some point in his early life, Joseph Jr. began charging for treasure hunting services, wherein he would use a seer stone to divine the location of buried treasure. Belief in folk magic, of course, had a long history in New England. In New York, local lore encouraged many to believe that they would find gold among the relics of the prehistoric mound builders. New York court records indicate that in March of 1826, Smith was brought to trial for glass looking, or the practice of locating treasure by gazing into a stone or scrying glass. According to Joseph Smith, he was praying in a grove in 1820 at the young age of 14 when two personages appeared to him whose brightness and glory defy all description. During this first vision, God informed Smith that all Christian sects were wrong and that he must join none of them. 3 years later, an angel named Moroni appeared in Smith's bedroom and revealed that golden plates containing the pure doctrines of Christianity had been buried centuries earlier at the hill Cumorah near Smith's home in New York. Along with these was a breastplate to which were attached two seer stones called Urim and Thummim, prepared by God for the purpose of translating the writing on the plates. According to Smith, he was not allowed to retrieve the plates until September 22, 1827, whereupon he set to work translating the Book of Mormon from the original Reformed Egyptian, a language otherwise unknown to historians. The Book of Mormon claims to tell the long-lost story of a group of ancient Israelites who left the Middle East and traveled to the Americas around the fall of the Kingdom of Judah in 586 BC. In language reminiscent of the King James Bible, it tells how the Nephites, who represented the true faith and prophetic traditions of Israel, and a rival branch of the family, the Lamanites, became opposing nations following generations of growing conflict. After hundreds of years of war, Jesus Christ himself appeared in the New World, told of his crucifixion and resurrection, and temporarily brought peace. But the fighting eventually resumed. The Nephites were destroyed in a final battle near the hill Cumorah. This history was abridged and recorded on the golden plates by the Nephite prophet Mormon. His son, Moroni, added a few final words, then buried the plates, only to return later as a resurrected angel and reveal their location to Joseph Smith. By the end of 1830, some 200 people had been baptized into Smith's Church of Christ, later named the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Smith served as the church's president, styled Joseph the Prophet, Seer, and Revelator. In 1831, Smith led his followers to Kirtland, Ohio, where a utopian community led by the minister Sidney Rigdon had recently converted to the new faith. Before the decade was out, the Latter-day Saint movement would add over 10,000 converts. Many of these settled in Missouri, in accordance with the revelation Smith claimed to receive in 1831 that the area around Independence was the location of Zion, the land of the saints' inheritance, where they were to gather to await the second coming of Christ. For the time being, Smith himself remained primarily in Ohio, where the church would dedicate its first temple in 1836. The Book of Mormon prophesied that the Lamanites would eventually embrace the true faith and help build a new Jerusalem. Accordingly, Smith instructed his missionaries to preach to the Delaware and other indigenous peoples, whom he evidently believed to be descended from the ancient Israelites. Meanwhile, many existing white settlers did not take kindly to the idea that their land would be an inheritance to others, nor did they much appreciate the assertion that non-Mormons were wicked and destined for destruction. Perhaps more importantly, many worried that they would shortly lose political control of the region. In the summer of 1833, a misunderstanding led Missourians, most of whom had Southern roots, to believe that the Yankee Mormons were encouraging blacks to join their settlement, in direct violation of the Missouri Constitution, which barred free blacks from the state. By the end of the year, the Latter-day Saints had been violently expelled from the area by mobs and state militia. In November of 1836, Joseph Smith petitioned the Ohio legislature for a bank license. He was denied, but carried on anyway. The Kirtland Safety Society Anti-Banking Company functioned essentially as a bank, and failed spectacularly, leading to lawsuits from creditors and an arrest warrant for Smith on the charge of banking fraud. By then, Smith had evidently already taken his first plural wife, and now faced significant dissent from within the church. In January of 1838, he and his remaining followers in Ohio left the state for a recently incorporated refuge in northwestern Missouri. There, some Latter-day Saints organized a vigilante group known as the Danites, both for self-protection and retaliation. When a Mormon was assaulted at a polling place later that year, a riot ensued, followed by a series of violent clashes collectively known as the Mormon War. In the end, Missouri Governor Lilburn Boggs issued an order to militia stating that the Mormons, quote, must be exterminated or driven from the state if necessary. Smith was jailed for treason, escaped, and in the spring of 1839 joined his followers in Illinois at a town he named Nauvoo, or a beautiful place. Incidentally, during Smith's time in Missouri, he identified a formation of rocks as the ruins of the altar Adam had built upon the first couple's expulsion from Eden. According to Smith, the garden itself had been located in Jackson County, Missouri. One of his successors, Brigham Young, would later explain that Noah's Ark landed in the Middle East following the flood, and thus set up the rest of the events of the Old Testament. In Nauvoo, Illinois, Joseph Smith and his followers were granted a city charter essentially allowing for self-rule. All the same, internal disagreements continued to plague the church. By 1843, Smith had married some 33 women, including a mother and daughter, and about a dozen who were already married to other men. While he informed his first wife Emma that he had received a revelation from God, commanding her not to condemn him, he did not come forward with this publicly. In 1844, however, a group of Mormon dissenters set up a newspaper called the Nauvoo Expositor. In its first and ultimately only issue, the Expositor accused Smith of, among other things, entering into plural marriages. Smith and the city council responded by declaring the press a public nuisance and ordering it destroyed. Alas, this apparent violation of First Amendment rights only further fanned the flames of fear and resentment in neighboring Illinoisans. Militias shortly assembled. Smith fled westward, then returned to face arrest out of loyalty to his followers. On June 27th, Smith and his brother Hiram were shot to death at Carthage jail by a mob including rogue militiamen. Most of the Latter-day Saints eventually acknowledged Brigham Young as Joseph Smith's successor, though a minority formed denominations under Smith's son or other leaders. Meanwhile, calls for the Saints to leave Illinois intensified. Young has been praised for his resourcefulness in leading the Saints' exodus, not least of all because neither he nor anyone else knew exactly where they were headed when they set out. Beginning in February of 1846, some 16,000 Latter-day Saints trekked westward across the country, with pioneers from one company planting crops which were harvested by the next. The Saints largely followed the Oregon Trail to Fort Bridger, Wyoming, whereupon they took the Hastings Cutoff into Utah and happily avoided the snowy fate of the Donner Party, which had taken the same trail only the year before en route to the Sierra Nevadas. For Young's part, on July 24, 1847, he looked out on the valley of the Great Salt Lake and, according to legend, said, "This is the place." Believe it or not, one of Joseph Smith's plural wives was none other than the widow of the anti-Masonic martyr William Morgan, who, incidentally, happened to be the subject of my last episode. If you're interested in learning more about the mysterious Morgan disappearance, its ties to an influential secret society, and how it changed American politics forever, check out this video. As always, any and all opinions are welcome in the comment section, but please remember to keep it civil. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, this is Bigfoot saying so long, and save me a seat at your next campfire.